All right, so I'm trying to figure out how to, are all the participants, is their video on? So you can turn on your video feeds.
Yeah, it's got the names of each of the participants, but we haven't actually.
Ah, there we go.
Our understanding was.
Sorry, guys. I know you're nervous enough.
We can certainly share our screen if that would be helpful. I don't know, Jerry. Same with her. I can pull up our roster and share it. Share my screen if that would be helpful. Sorry, I thought you would have been provided that up front. So I will pull our.
Okay.
In a moment, Jerry.
And is everybody on gallery view?
I will actually.
And does everybody want to try to unmute to see if they can speak?
Okay, I think that our second scoring judge just entered. Joan, are you with us?
Huh.
Looks like she's not connected to the audio yet. Okay. Oh, there she is.
Ah, there we go. We have, you guys should all be unmuted at this point.
Do you want to put your video on?
So Emma, can you say something?
Hi there.
Okay, good. We're getting some feedback from another. Can anybody else hear that?
The rosters won't help us because we don't know which person's doing the opening or the closing.
Okay, so Joan, you need to go.
Okay. I think. All right. Welcome everybody. I'm really sorry. We're all over 35, so we don't know how to run these things. And this was our first trial run. So I am Chris Radiff. I'm your presiding judge. We have with us Michelle Faust, who is one of our scorers, and Drew Thomas, who is one of our other scorers. And everybody can hear me okay? Raise your hand if you can all hear me. Yay! Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna give you a little bit of pre-trial information. First of all, I need to ask if each side is ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, great, thank you. And are you, Mr. Bauer, which, are you prosecution or defense?
I am prosecution.
Okay, and is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, whoever that was, I could not hear them.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready.
Okay, you may need to increase your volume.
Can you hear me now?
Very, very faintly. Can anybody else hear her? Okay, let me increase my volume. Okay, let me. All right, I'm going to give that a go. All right, sorry about that, you guys. Okay, and I need copies of trial rosters. Are you guys going to publish those?
I haven't heard of how I'm supposed to make a trial roster. So could I just share, type into
Yes.
my
or you can, if you want, you can just tell me which one of you guys is prosecution, and that'll be easier for us to keep track of. So I've got Matthias, your prosecution, right?
right.
Okay, who else? Ah, there we go. This is prosecution trial. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. And would, where'd everybody go? Defense, if you would like to publish yours as well. And if you're having trouble, we can probably, who's in charge of publishing that or getting us that link?
I think defense might have the same question.
Okay. So what we're getting is the Zoom group chat. If you just want to push your link there, that's fine. If you're having trouble doing that, I think we can probably deduce from once we start. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. All right. So this will be helpful for, I'm supposed to read all these instructions to you guys. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. We have, who are the timers? If you could raise your hand. Okay, and you both, oh, here we go. Here comes Michelle. All right. So let me just go through these. That all gallery members in the Bar Association, they're maybe taking photographs. I don't know if they're going to be doing that and how, but everybody needs to be aware. No one else is allowed to be able to take those photos. Is there anyone in the gallery who is not competing in this round that are student members that are student members and coaches of the school, but from a different team? So is there anyone from a different team? Please let me know.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, great, thank you. There will be no recesses allowed unless, of course, we have technical failures, and then we'll figure that out. The teams, each of our scoring panelists, Ms. Faust and Mr. Thomas, you guys will be receiving the forms for that. At this point, they haven't uploaded them yet, and so just keep track by as the client is talking, or the party is talking. I think that'll just be easier than waiting. I'm to remind the teams and coaches that any disputes arising out of the competition are to be reported in accordance with the competition. That your time requirements are to be complied with, and if we have any conflicts, I have rules on how we are to do that. I want to confirm there's no coach or team member that is not part of this school, and I think everybody's probably figured that out. Okay. And now I need to swear in the team members. So if the team members can please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
And for gallery members, I'm going to tell you to raise your right hand, although I don't see them, that including teacher and attorney coaches, family members, and friends, do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? I'm
Yes,
assuming
Your
you're great. Okay. And scoring panelists, please raise your right hand. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
I do. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So is everyone ready to proceed? Again, sorry for the delay. And we would start with, I believe, the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor. Could I please give some preliminary matters?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'd first request that the judge and the jury each get a copy of stipulated facts. And
Okay.
I request permission for the trial technician on my side, Robbie Zeman, to screen share exhibits for entering and publishing them.
I so grant that.
And I also request that once an exhibit is entered, it is automatically published to the jury.
That is granted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And does the defense have any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we request permission for timekeepers to post time in the public chat.
Are there any objections to that? Okay, so granted.
Your Honor, we also request that participants mute their microphones and videos except when they are the witness or are directing, crossing, and redirecting or recrossing a witness. Videos and microphones would also be on for opening and closing.
Yes, I grant that, especially with all the feedback we get in Zoom.
That is all the preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Okay. Is there anything else, or would the prosecution like to proceed with their opening?
I would like to proceed, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please go forward.
Okay. Good morning. May it please the court, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Matthias Bauer, and alongside with my co-counsel, Ben Costin, Robbie Zeman, and I, we represent the people of the state of Colorado this morning. This case is about an ex-mock trial student, Avery Becker, and his uncontrollable rage towards his mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman. That rage led him to getting in, getting out, and getting even with Mr. Brackman, leading to his tragic death. On March 6th, 2020, Coach Brackman was found dead in the doorway of his home. The evidence will show that just prior to his death, Coach Brackman had demoted, then removed the defendant from the mock trial team. You will hear that the defendant had vandalized Coach Brackman's car after trying to get even with the mock trial coach. The evidence will show beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant planned to get even and vandalize Coach's home after he was kicked off the team. His plan to get in and out of the house to get even with his coach went terribly wrong, ending with the killing of Mr. Brackman. When Avery arrived to Brackman's house with the intention to trash it, it quickly escalated and resulted in the death of Mr. Brackman. The exhibits show that there was a fight from the broken plate in the kitchen, which was no use since Brackman was brutally stabbed in the back. Members of the jury, we will call 3 different witnesses in this trial. Detective Jordan Markowitz is a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department with a phone technology and forensic data recovery certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement. Detective Markowitz located that the defendant's phone was near Mr. Brackman's house around the time that he was found dead, and the evidence will map the route that the defendant took to get to Brackman's house. Next, we will call up Alex Fuentes. Alex was a good friend of the defendant, and he will testify the defendant's ability to improvise and make things up on the fly. He will tell you that the defendant texted him to see if he could get help to get back on the team. When Mr. Fuentes reported back that Coach Brackman was being stubborn and non-compliant, the defendant told him that he was going to break into Coach Brackman's house and trash it. He will explain the defendant ran out of options and retaliated against Coach Brackman out of his own rage. Finally, we will call Kyle Kuzak, a certified crime scene reconstruction investigator. Mr. Kuzak will testify that there was a struggle that occurred in the back of the house in the kitchen. He will explain the events leading to Coach Brackman's murder and the order they occurred and tie the defendant to the scene. Lastly, due to Mr. Kuzak's specialty in crime scene reconstruction, he will also be able to reconstruct the crime scene for the jury, showing Avery's plan to getting in, getting out, and getting even with Coach Brackman. Members of the jury, although the defense may claim that Mr. Becker's phone was taken from him and brought to Mr. Brackman's residency, it is blatantly incorrect. A map of the location of Avery's phone will show that Avery went with his phone from his home straight to Coach Brackman's house via the mapped out route shown on Exhibit 16. Also, the defense may claim that Mr. Cifuentes stole Avery's phone and gave it to Mr. Rollins, a fellow student. However, Mr. Cifuentes will testify that he had no connection to Mr. Rollins, making it heavily unlikely that this ever happened. Mr. Costin, Mr. Zeman, and I, as representatives of the people of Colorado, have the burden of proof in this matter. We must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Avery Becker, broke into the dwelling of Mackenzie Brackman on March 6th with the intent to commit criminal mischief. That is second-degree burglary. Regardless of the defendant's intent to murder Coach Brackman, he must be convicted of murder in the first degree if we prove that his death was caused in the course of committing second-degree burglary, which we will do. Evidence will show that Avery's tension and anger was running high and that he simply planned on getting in, getting out, and getting even with Mr. Brackman, but it escalated and resulted in the heartbreaking death of Mr. Brackman. With this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we ask that you find the defendant guilty as charged on both counts. We seek justice for Mackenzie Brackman and the people of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. And for the defense, would you like to do an opening?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, opposing counsel, and Your Honor, today we are going to hear an elaborate story about two experts who did a poor police work identifying the wrong suspect and gave an insufficient assembly of evidence against Avery Becker, whose only fault was vandalizing the car, a lapse of judgment that she continually apologized for. Most definitely not a person capable of murder. The prosecution will present three witnesses: a high school rival of Avery Becker, who 1 had no knowledge of the crime, 2 wasn't there for the crime, and 3 wasn't a friend of Avery's. They were simply jealous of Miss Becker. Both police experts, with all the technological tools that the government has provided them and the years of experience and knowledge in the field, failed to do their jobs and skipped multiple important steps in their investigation. We will bring you Avery Becker, an honors student and award-winning mock trial competitor, after she realized that the marker she used to deface her coach's car was permanent instead of a temporary outburst towards her coach, who cried after she went home. She was with her friend Taylor Perkins all day during the day of the murder. Taylor Perkins. Mr. Perkins not only knows the character of his best friend, he verified that he was with her all day. Indeed, he presented an alibi. Maybe you don't fully believe the words of teenagers, so what about the affirmation of crime scene reconstruction and police investigative tactics expert Blake Van Owen? Owen will conclude, police identified as the murder weapon a knife that didn't match the location where the prosecution said it came from, and it was a weapon that could not possibly have been used successfully by someone Avery Becker's size. Police failed to use cell phone tower investigative tools that they had and instead relied on screenshots, which are easily manipulated. And critically, the police ignored the obvious connections between Blair Robbins and the murder victim. Robbins, as you learned, had a significant motive to kill Coach Brackman, the man who sent his father to prison. At the end of the day, this is a teenager, Avery Becker, who cannot handle the guilt of vandalizing Coach Brackman's car, simply isn't capable of murder. By the end of today, you need to decide, is Miss Becker really capable of murder? We are here to prove that Miss Becker, without a doubt, is not guilty.
Thank you, counsel. Is the prosecution ready to call its first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
I would call Jordan Markowitz to the stand. Could you please state your first and last name and spell it for the record?
My name is Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
Jordan Markowitz, what do you do for a living?
I am a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department.
And how long have you been a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department?
I've been with the Denver Police Department for roughly 13 years, and I've been a detective for about 7.
What did you specialize in as a homicide detective?
I have specialized training and experience with cell phones specifically.
Did you ever receive a certification from the American Academy for Cell Phone Technology and Forensic Data Recovery?
Yes, I do have a certification in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery that I had to complete a 3-day training course and pass a certification test to obtain.
And what are you taught in this course?
In this course, I learned about the types of cell phone data and records that can be obtained. I learned how to use systems such as the Celebrite system to download information from cell phones, and I learned how to acquire and interpret cellular records and cell tower data.
And have you ever used this training in your own cases before?
Yes, I use this training constantly. I've downloaded the contents of hundreds of cell phones, and I've interpreted cell tower data in over 50 cases.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to enter Detective Markowitz as an expert in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery on the fields of her extensive field experience and training and in criminal investigation under Rule 702.
Defense?
No
What is your
objection.
position?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, detective shall be so admitted.
Okay. Detective, when were you assigned to the case of Mackenzie Brackman?
I was assigned to this case on March 6, 2020.
And could you please explain the lead up to the crime?
Before the crime, a passing motorist, 444 South Flower Street, observed a man possibly passed out on the porch and reported it to police. And then paramedics responded and found the victim dead, and which I and police responded at roughly.
Our witness here is going on a story. Could the counsel pick a question that's more?
I'll give some leeway given that Detective Markowitz is a expert, but it'd be helpful if we had a little bit more breakup in questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Could you please explain what happened before the crime?
Before the crime, presumably, Brackman had fallen on his way out the door and then had gotten stabbed in the upper left shoulder and died from it.
Okay. Approximately how long after the crime was committed did you arrive to the crime scene?
I arrived at the crime scene at roughly 2:20 p.m.
And upon entering the crime scene, what did you notice?
Upon arriving at the crime scene, I saw Brackman's body laying just inside the front door in a pool of blood with his stab wound on his left shoulder visible.
And what was the name of the victim of the crime?
The name of the victim was Mackenzie Brackman, a criminal defense attorney.
Okay. Let the record reflect that I'm showing the opposing counsel a clean and unmarked copy of what has been previously shown as Exhibit 1, 2, and 3, and 4. I would ask at this point that my trial technician please presents Exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the courtroom.
Yes, please do so.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Detective, do you recognize whom is shown in these photographs?
Yes, I do.
And what is shown in these photographs?
These photographs show various angles of Brackman's body, including his view from the front door and his stab wound, specifically more in Exhibits 3 and 4.
And how are you yourself familiar with these photographs?
My team took these photographs.
And does the scene portrayed in these photographs fairly and accurately represent the scene as you remember it on March 6th, 2020?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4 into evidence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
They shall be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me direct your attention to the surroundings of the house. What was on the front and the back side of Kenzie Brackman's home?
On Mackenzie Brackman's home, I observed several Ring devices, including a Ring doorbell that you can see in Exhibit 1, and a couple Ring cameras around the back of the house.
Detective, what are Ring cameras and what do they do?
Ring cameras are used mostly as security by the user, and they record or detect any movement, and then
I'm sorry?
Objection relevance. What's the relevance of this question?
I'll allow a little leeway, and if you have further objection, let me know.
Do you want, Your Honor, do you want a response from me?
Sure.
Okay. Ring cameras are really important in showing how the crime scene was to be committed and really help give us some background information on how the perpetrator came to kill Mr. Brackman, Your Honor.
Okay, yeah, I will allow it for now at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, did you ever obtain the footage from the Ring cameras?
Yes, I was able to obtain the footage from Brackman's Ring account.
And how did you obtain the footage?
I obtained this footage by downloading information from Brackman's phone.
I'm currently handing you once again an unmarked version of Exhibits 10, 12, and 13. At this point, I would ask my co-counsel to share Exhibits 10, then 12, then 13.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Please go ahead.
I would ask that my co-counsel now shares Exhibit 12.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
And finally, I would ask that, okay.
And was that 13, counsel?
That was, Your Honor.
And did defense have any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Detective, you said you looked at these exhibits yourself?
Yes, I have.
And would you agree that these exhibits are unfair and accurate representation of the perpetrator's steps to kill Brackman?
Yes, I agree.
Objection, speculations.
Yeah, if you could, or counsel, you can respond.
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Markowitz is an expert on these fields and should be allowed to give her expert opinion on these exhibits, Your Honor.
I think if you could rephrase it rather than saying to kill, perhaps maybe so it does not sway the jury so much.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Detective, would you agree that these exhibits are a fair and accurate representation of how the perpetrator came into the home of Mr. Brackman?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I offer exhibits 10, 12, and 13 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
They shall be admitted.
Okay, having shown these exhibits to the court, could you please explain what is shown in Exhibit 12, 10, 12, and 13?
These exhibits are videos showing the perpetrator, a mass perpetrator, first trying the front door, then it being locked, and proceeding to the back of the residence and entering the house that way.
Objection, speculation, Your Honor. Counsel's asking the witness to guess about facts.
Counsel?
Sorry, Your Honor, she's not speculating, she's stating what is shown in these exhibits.
And I'll allow it, especially since she's also been determined to be an expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. What conclusions can these videos give us?
Based on these videos, it shows a perpetrator trying the front door, then it being locked, and then entering residence through the back door, presumably where all of the events leading up to Brackman's murder happened, and then later the perpetrator escaping through the front door, showing the pathing of this intruder.
What other evidence did you find on Mr. Brackman's phone?
On Brackman's phone, I also managed to find many emails and text messages related to a mock trial, which I discovered he was a coach of.
I would like to direct your attention to Alex Fuentes. Do you know who he is?
Yes, I did.
And did you ever come in contact with him?
Yes, I did.
What was Alex Fuentes' relation to Avery Becker?
Alex Fuentes was on the same mock trial team as Avery Becker and was able to provide me with some conversations they had.
What were these conversations about?
These conversations were about Becker's intent to go to Brackman's house and trash it.
Okay, I'm currently handing you Exhibit 14. At this time, I would ask that my counsel pulls up Exhibit 14.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Detective, have you looked at these messages yourself?
Yes, I have.
And do you believe that these are fair and accurate representation of the messages exchanged between Alex Cifuentes and Avery Becker?
Yes, I did.
This exhibit hasn't been entered as evidence yet, so.
Counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. I am first trying to lay some foundation on how the Detective Markowitz came to these exhibits and if they fairly represent the work between Alex Cifuentes and Avery Becker.
I agree. Keep proceeding.
Okay. Detective, you have looked at these exhibits yourself, and are you aware of the contents within them?
Yes, I am.
Your Honor, I offer Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
14 is admitted.
Okay. I would ask that my co-counsel takes down Exhibit 14 at this time. Because of these text messages, is it possible that Avery Becker had planned on trashing the home of Mr. Brackman, but it turned into far more, leading to the eventual death of Mr.
Objection, improper character evidence. This witness doesn't know Avery Becker. You wouldn't know the character of Avery Becker.
Counsel?
Your Honor, these text messages show clear implications of Avery Becker's intent with Mr. Brackman. For that reason, I believe that Detective Markowitz is fair to give his expert opinion on how the perpetrator came to commit these crimes or enter the home of Mr. Brackman.
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, would you agree that it is possible that this trashing could have escalated and turned into far more, leading to the eventual death of Mr. Brackman?
Yes, most definitely. The intent is clearly stated in the text messages.
Okay, now I will direct your attention to Avery Becker. Did you ever try to get in contact with a cell phone?
Yes, I tried. However, Avery Becker's lawyer had informed me that Becker had lost it on March 5th.
What did you do instead?
Avery Becker's lawyer was able to give me Becker's phone number, and through that, I was able to obtain records for that phone number.
What records did you obtain?
I obtained cell tower records, or more specifically CDRs.
Could you please explain to the court what CDRs are and how they're helpful in this case?
Yes, so CDRs are records of interactions.
I'm sorry, what was your objection?
What's the relevance of this question?
Counsel?
Your Honor, CDR records are essential in determining the relative location of a person. In this case, it is really important to see where Avery Becker was at the time that the crime was committed, and therefore is really important for concluding to who was the perpetrator of this crime.
Yes, I will let detective proceed with explaining what a CDR is.
Once again, detective, could you please explain to the court what CDR records are?
Yes, so CDRs are records kept about the interactions between cell phones that may include text messages or calls, and it will record the time and date of these interactions, and if it was a phone call, how long it lasted, and also the phone numbers that were involved and such.
Detective, are you aware of exhibits 15 and 16?
Yes, I am.
Have you looked at these exhibits yourself?
Yes, I created them.
And do you believe that these are fair and accurate representations of cell tower records and the most likely path that Avery Becker took to get to Mr. Brackman's home?
Yes.
At this point, I would ask that my co-counsel please pulls up Exhibit 15, followed by Exhibit 16.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you. I I offer exhibits 15 and 16 into evidence.
Any objection?
Objection. What's the relevance of these photos?
Counsel?
Your Honor, once again, CDRs have been proven to show that they're really important in determining the relative location of a person at a specific moment in time. This is really important in identifying the perpetrator of this crime, therefore its relevance to this case.
I'll allow it.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
admitted.
Detective, what conclusions do exhibit 15 and 16 give to the relative location of Avery Becker?
These exhibits show the cell towers and the specific antennas that Becker's phone connected to on the day and time of Brackman's murder. And all of these towers are within significant close location to Brackman's home.
Detective, is it fair to say that due to the close proximity of Avery Becker and the timestamps shown on exhibit 16, moments before the crime, that Avery Becker could be a possible perpetrator?
Objection.
I'm sorry, there's an objection. What is that?
Objection leading question, Your Honor. The counsel's implying the answer is in the question being posed.
I agree. If you can rephrase, counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. What possible conclusion could exhibits 15 and 16 give to Avery Becker's movements from her house to Coach Brackman's home?
According to the cell towers and antennas that Becker's phone connected to, it's very evident that the path Becker took was from their house and through a specific route that I mapped along in Exhibit 16 to Brackman's house.
Thank you. That is all I have. No further questions.
If we can pull down the exhibit, and counsel, if you would like to do any cross-examination.
I would like to cross-examination. Hello, Detective Markowitz. How did you receive your certificate in phone technology and forensic data recovery?
I took a 3-day training course and took a certification test at the end.
So what happened to the blood splatter photo?
Unfortunately, those photos or the digital files on the camera were corrupted.
In your witness statement, you said that you aren't a blood expert.
No, not specifically, but I've been in enough homicides to recognize specific blood patterns.
So you said that the blood spatter were cast marks, correct?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
You said that the blood spatter were cast marks, correct?
Yes, that is what I recognize them as.
But this crime happened in March of 2020 and it's 2021. So if those photos are corrupted and you aren't a blood expert, how do you know for sure that they are cast-off marks?
Again, I've been in multiple homicide cases and enough to be able to recognize certain blood patterns and marks. And in this case, I was able to recognize them as cast-off blood marks.
But you said yourself, you've seen several cases and you've been in several homicides. That's been a year. So could from a year to now, your memory and misplaced thinking and you could be false?
In my opinion, no. I remember many of the crime scene or much of the crime scene quite clearly. And what I recognize is what I remember.
Did you know Mr. Brackman before the case?
Yes, I did.
Did you find what he did, like him professional with his job?
In my opinion, I thought Brackman as he got a little bit off topic at times, and he tried to attack the work the police did instead of actually trying to focus on incriminating evidence.
You met up with Alex Fuentes, is that correct?
Correct.
And you suspected Avery Becker because of Alex Fuentes.
Yes, a lot of the evidence came from Alex Fuentes.
Did Alex witness the murder? Was Alex at the scene of the crime?
No, she was not.
So the cell phone was found at Avery Becker's cell phone was found at Mr. Brackman's house. Okay.
Correct.
But you are also aware that Mrs. Becker has lost her phone the day prior to the murder, correct?
That's what she claims. However, CDRs will show a different pathing due to for Becker's phone.
What do you think Mrs. Becker's motive is?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What do you think Mrs. Becker's motive for murdering Coach Brackman is?
In my opinion, it might have been anything from jealousy, as the text messages show. It's likely because Becker got kicked off the team and was searching for a way to get revenge.
So Mrs. Becker, a high school student, committed murder over mock trial. Is that what you conclude?
It didn't even have to be murder. She just had to have the intent to go to Brackman's house to commit whatever crime that she had thought of, for example, burglary, but that ended up in murder, unfortunately.
But this was all over mock trial, in your opinion?
Yes.
That's all, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
And does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to pass the case on to my co-counsel.
Okay, and who is that?
I think that will be Robert Zeman or Ben Costin. I'm not too sure who goes next, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Whoever-
I believe Ben Costin will be going next, directing Kyle Kuzak.
Thank you. Mr. Costin, nice to see you. Call your next witness, please.
I call Mr. Kuzak to the stand. Mr. Kuzak, can you please state your first name and last name and spell your last name for the record?
Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
And what do you do for a living?
I work at the Denver Police Department as a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
And what experience do you have in this field?
I've been a crime scene reconstruction investigator, or just CSR, for 19 years, the last 3 of which I've spent with the city of Denver.
What kind of investigations have you analyzed in your career?
I've done all sorts of complex crimes, domestic violence, fatal accidents, robberies, burglaries, property crimes, all sorts of stuff.
And so what does crime scene reconstruction mean exactly?
Well, crime scene reconstruction is basically just using all the evidence presented at a crime scene to reconstruct the event and figure out what happened between the different people involved.
How do you approach your CSR work?
Well, I assume that everything is going to trial, so I do a thorough and comprehensive investigation, and then I also try and memorialize and document all of the evidence so that I'll be able to reconstruct it easily later on.
And what principles guide your work?
My work is guided by 5 principles: recognition and documentation, the collection of evidence, evaluation of evidence, hypothesis and testing.
Oh, I think we have a freezing. Oh, Mr. Adams, are you still with us? So can we stop the timing to see if we can get Mr. Adams back?
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Everyone just froze for me there.
Yep, there you go. All right. Let me test you again. Can you say something?
Hello? Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
good. All right, timers can recommence.
Your Honor, now I offer Mr. Kuzak as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction under Rule 702.
Defense, your position? Taylor, we could not hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Did you have any
No
objection?
objections.
Okay, so so shall be admitted as an expert. Also, somebody has something possibly running in the background. I can hear some chatter just to make sure everybody has their stuff turned off. So, okay, proceed, Mr. Costin.
Thank you, Your Honor. What evidence, Mr. Cusack, what evidence do you review in preparation for the case?
I reviewed all sorts of evidence at the crime scene. The physical evidence of the knives, photographs of the dead body in the knives, the Ring doorbell videos, along with the defense experts' reports and witness statements.
Mr. Cusack, I direct your attention to exhibits 10, 11, and 12. Do you know what these are?
Let me pull them up in front of me. Yes, and these are.
Now I direct your attention specifically to exhibit 10. What is demonstrated on exhibit 10?
Exhibit 10 is a Ring doorbell video of the intruder walking up to Mackenzie Brackman's front door and trying the front door and then leaving.
And now I direct your attention to exhibit 11. What was demonstrated in exhibit 11?
Exhibit 11 is approximately 10 seconds later, and it's a Ring doorbell camera capturing the perpetrator entering Mackenzie Brackman's back gate.
And now moving on to exhibit 12, what was going on during this exhibit?
Exhibit 12 was approximately 10 seconds after that, where the intruder entered through Mackenzie Brackman's back door into his home kitchen.
I now direct your attention to exhibit 13. Mr. Cusack, what is shown in this exhibit?
Exhibit 13 is a video of the intruder running out the front door of Mackenzie Brackman's house.
Thank you. And now all of these exhibits, exhibit 10, 11, 12, and 13, what do these exhibits suggest?
Well, these exhibits suggest that the intruder went up to Mackenzie Brackman's front door, most likely trying to get in, trying the front door. From there, they went around to the back gate and went through the back gate and finally went into Mackenzie Brackman's back door. From there, we can assume that is where the murder occurred and they got in some sort of altercation. And finally, the intruder, after Mackenzie Brackman had died, ran out the front door, fleeing from the crime scene.
I now direct your attention to March 6, 2020. Where were you on this day?
I was working at 444 South Flower Street.
And when did you arrive at the crime scene?
I arrived sometime after other members had processed it, so probably sometime in the afternoon.
Other than the crime scene, can you tell the court on what you relied your forming your opinions on?
I formed my opinion on photographs of the crime scene, the coroner's report, the defense experts' reports, the Ring doorbell videos, and witness statements.
Your Honor, I would right now like to object to the blood splatter photos since they are unavailable.
I'm sorry, you're objecting because they're unavailable?
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yes, ma'am.
defense's position on that? We can't hear you, Ms. Klein.
Can you hear me?
A little bit now, yes. Oh, no, anybody else hear her?
I can't hear her.
Yeah. And Mr. Costin, you're objecting to exhibits that have already been admitted?
I don't think they have been admitted yet.
Okay. Ms. Klein, can you hear it? Can you?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there's a slight delay. Let's try that. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And your position on counsel's objection?
What was the objection again?
Could you please state it again, Mr. Costin?
I would like to, Your Honor, I would like to object to reliance on the blood splatter photos since they are unavailable.
Did you hear that, Ms. Klein?
Yes, no objections.
Okay, it's granted.
All right. Mr. Kuzak, I now direct your attention to Exhibit 17. What is presented in this exhibit?
Exhibit 17 is my witness tracking sheet. The next page is my evidence tracking sheet. And finally, my flow chart of what happened at the crime scene.
To make it easier, Your Honor, I would like to ask my co-counsel to present Exhibit 17 onto the screen.
Yes, please do. Okay, please proceed.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kuzak, did you create this?
Yes, I created it myself after reviewing the evidence at the crime scene.
And is this a fair representation of your work?
Yes.
Your Honor, because Exhibit 17 will assist the court in tracking Mr. Kuzak's analysis, I offer Exhibit 17 into evidence.
Ms. Klein, what is your position?
No objections, Your Honor.
It shall be admitted.
Mr. Kuzak, can you walk through the court through your flow chart, please?
Sure. Basically, the intruder approached the front door of the victim's house and tried the front door. From there, they went to the back door to get into the house. Once they got into the victim, Mackenzie Brackman's kitchen, they got in some sort of altercation. While this was happening, Mackenzie Brackman most likely got notified of the intruder via the Ring doorbell app and armed himself with a knife. From there, the two got in an altercation, most likely in close contact over the knife. Mackenzie Brackman, the victim, ended up being stabbed in the back, most likely in some sort of bear hug position.
Objection.
And your objection? And what's your objection, counsel? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Speculation.
Counsel, what's your response to that?
Since Mr. Kuzak is an expert witness, I believe his opinion of the crime, and since he is a crime scene reconstructor, I believe that his opinion of the crime scene is justified.
I agree. Please proceed.
And were you done, Mr. Kuzak?
Well, I'll finish. Just that the victim from there, after being stabbed, fell down, pulled out the knife, and bled out as the perpetrator fled through the front door.
And was there any evidence after the perpetrator entered the house?
After the perpetrator entered the house, there was evidence of a struggle through the broken plate on the floor, along with scuff marks.
Now direct your attention to Exhibit 18.
Yes, I have that in front of me.
And may my counsel present Exhibit 18 for the court?
Yes, unless there's an objection. So proceed.
All right. Mr. Kuzak, can you identify where these scuff marks are in the picture?
The scuff marks are directly next to the back door.
Objection.
What's your objection, counsel?
May I confer with co-counsel, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, this witness wasn't entered as an expert.
I believe I granted him to proceed as an expert in crime scene investigation.
Okay, no objections, Your Honor.
Okay, it shall continue, counsel.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Kuzak, do these scuff marks indicate anything?
Yes, they do. They tell us that there was some sort of struggle that occurred in Mackenzie Brackman's kitchen.
And when you were at the crime scene, did you view the subject presented in this exhibit?
Yes, I saw the scuff marks myself.
I move to enter Exhibit 18 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. 18 shall be admitted.
Now, Mr. Cusack, I direct your attention to Exhibit 19. And can my co-counsel please present this to the court?
Yes, please.
All right. Mr. Cusack, can you identify this exhibit?
Yes, Exhibit 19 is the autopsy report of Mackenzie Brackman.
And how do you know what this is?
I reviewed this report in my investigation.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the autopsy report you viewed?
Yes.
I now move to enter Exhibit 19 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, it shall be admitted.
Mr. Cusack, what was indicated by the report?
Well, the report gives more evidence about how Mackenzie Brackman was stabbed. He was stabbed in the upper shoulder. The knife nicked his scapula, making it very hard to pull out. It also then nicked his aorta, so as he did finally pull it out, it unplugged the artery, causing him to bleed out rapidly and eventually die.
All right. And how do you believe moving on, and how do you believe the victim got notified by the invader's presence?
The victim was most likely notified of the invader via the Ring doorbell app.
Speculation.
Overruled.
Mr. Cusack, can you please repeat your answer?
Sure. The victim was most likely alerted of the intruder via the Ring doorbell app, and if he hadn't been alerted from that, he would have most definitely been alerted from the sound of the back door opening.
And what do you believe the witness did after he was notified of the invader?
He most likely looked in the drawer, trying to find a weapon to arm himself, and then ultimately grabbed a chef's knife from his knife block.
And can you explain in your expert opinion what the victim did when he saw the perpetrator?
Counsel, I see that time is up. I don't know if you have your chat up. So we're not allowed to give extensions. So at this time, I'll have you stand down and have Ms. Glein do any cross-examination.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Cusack. Are you a police officer?
No, I'm not. I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
You figured out the chronological order of events that took place by the photos, right?
Yes, I did.
You said yourself in your affidavit that the photos were corrupted. How do you know for sure the order of events?
Well, the photos of the blood spatter specifically were corrupted. Everything else was fine. And so using all the other evidence, I was able to put together what happened.
Why do you dismiss Blake Van Owen's conclusion to what happened to the victim?
Well, because Blake Van Owen isn't an actual CSR, and I'm more qualified than him to be doing things like this. He also wasn't actually at the crime scene to be able to view what happened. Blake Van Owen just reviewed other people's reports.
You reviewed the Van Owen report, right? What did you think?
I believe that it was a robbery gone wrong, while the Van Owen report believes that it was a intent of murder.
You and Van Owen are in different fields and expertise, so how are you more qualified?
Well, he used to be a police officer, and now he just reviews the reports of CSRs without actually doing our work.
Were you at the crime scene?
I was at the crime scene.
Your conclusion was a burglary gone wrong. How does this relate to Avery Becker?
Well, this relates to Avery Becker because Avery Becker showed intent to want to go to Mackenzie Breckman's house to vandalize or burglar his house. And then when Mr. Breckman noticed the intruder, he armed himself and murder happened.
That's all for questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. So I believe since we're out of time, there's no redirect. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
Yes.
My co-counsel, Robbie Zeman.
Okay, Mr. Zeman, who would you like to call as your next witness?
Alex Cifuentes.
Mrs. Fuentes. Is that you, Miss Duda?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead and call your witness.
Good evening, Ms. Cifuentes. Please state your full name and spell your last for the court.
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
What's your relationship with the defendant?
We were close friends on the mock trial team.
What's your opinion of the coach of the mock trial team?
He was a great lawyer, a good coach, and he helped improve our mock trial team greatly.
What's your opinion of the defendant's performance in mock trial?
Avery was quite lazy, but she was very skilled and very good at improvising, but it was hard on the team with Avery's unpreparedness.
What would you say about her performance as a witness?
Avery was a very believable witness, and she was very good at lying on the stand.
Describe your philosophy when it comes to mock trial.
I took my rules very seriously. I would prepare my drafts the day they were assigned, and I would refine them until they're perfect. I would often practice in front of my friends and family before competitions.
On the mock trial team, did you see the defendant interact with Breckman?
Yes, Coach Brackman was always telling Avery to prepare more, but Avery refused, and she would always put him in these situations.
Did you see anything happen between the defendant and Coach Brackman leading up to the murder?
Avery was late for several practices, and Coach Brackman demoted her to the B team.
What happened then?
Avery convinced Taylor Perkins to also quit the team, and therefore Coach Brackman had to bring Avery back up.
Objection, Your Honor.
Compete.
Debate question.
And before I have Mr. Zeman, can you stop the timer for a moment, please? Emma, can I get your last name? It's not showing on the screen.
I'm sorry, that would be Espino, Espino.
That's no problem. All right, you can start the timers again. Timers, Mr. Zeman, what's your response to her objection?
Can you repeat the objection?
Objection, vague question, as well as no proper foundation.
I do not believe the question was vague since I had already established a timeline.
Yeah, I'll allow it. Proceed.
What happened after that?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
I think we lost a little bit of volume. He asked what happened after that.
The team was understandably upset that Avery got back on the team. Avery went on to win the Best Training Award and the Best Closing, but she didn't work for it at all.
What happened at the next practice between Brackman and the defendant?
Coach Brackman told Avery that what she was doing in mock trial would be considered malpractice in the real world, and to not confuse good showmanship for good lawyering.
What did the defendant do in response to that?
Avery left in anger and vandalized Coach Brackman's Porsche.
Was the defendant charged with this vandalism?
No, Coach Brackman did not press charges. He was a very caring coach, and although Avery was not Coach Brackman's student, he did not press charges.
Did you talk to the defendant about the vandalism?
Avery texted me afterwards and asked me to help her speak to Coach Brackman for her and get her back on the team.
Permission to screen share Exhibit 14.
Yes, please. And I'm sorry, can we pause time for a moment? I see Miss Rule has said time's up. Miss Rule, if you could please enter in and explain to me what your entry is. On the group chat.
Hi, this team has already used all of their time for questioning their witnesses. This is the time for crossing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was not aware that it was, I thought it was 20 minutes per witness.
It's 25 minutes total.
Okay. Mr. Zeman, are you aware, or do you have any other information besides that?
I can end my questioning if that is what the timekeeper.
Okay. And Ms. Rule, when you said that their time was up, where was he? How much testimony had been taken from this witness?
This entire testimony was up. They used it after the last questioning. It had ended the last questioning.
Okay, so I believe that the proper thing would be to strike the testimony of this witness.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rule. All right, so prosecution, since this, we're done with this witness, it sounds to me that you only have cross-examination time left. So at this time, I believe the defense will need to present their case.
Is the defense going to cross-examine the witness?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You're cutting out.
Is the defense going to cross-examine the witness?
Well, since I struck her testimony, they will not need to do that. Thank you. All right, defense counsel, do you have any witnesses you're going to call?
Yes, I would like to call Mrs. Blake Van Owens to the stand.
Okay, please call.
Hello, Mrs. Owens. Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Of course. My name is Blake Van Owen, spelled BLAKEVANOWEN.
What is your profession?
I'm a private investigator, a professor, and an expert witness in police practices. I was previously an officer working for the Aurora Police Department.
Can you elaborate on your experience with the Aurora Police Department?
I quit the department after an unfortunate incident in which I had injured a young woman of color during an arrest. Officially, I was cleared of all wrongdoing because the technique I'd used at the time had been completely approved. But unofficially, I've never cleared myself for my conduct on that evening. Nothing crystallizes a sense that things need to change more than the sense that I wish I knew then what I know now. I was disillusioned by police work, and in the interest of atoning for my actions, I quit.
Why are you participating in this case?
Today I'm here to denounce the prosecution's handling of this case as nothing short of grossly negligent. I refuse to stand for this behavior when I was an officer, and I refuse to stand for it now.
Your Honor, permission to share my screen and show what is marked as Exhibit 20.
Whoever's for the prosecution, any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Please do.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is my case report, and it includes some of my qualifications.
Why are you familiar with this exhibit?
I wrote it.
I would like to enter this exhibit into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor. Could I actually, yes, objection, Your Honor, more foundation.
Yes, counsel, if you could provide a little bit more foundation besides just that she wrote it.
Of course. Um, what did what does this report consist of?
This is my case report describing my interpretation of the events. It has all of the details that the prosecution failed to obtain, and it includes a more objective perspective on the case.
Your Honor, I would like to now enter this exhibit into evidence.
Counsel,
No objection, Your Honor.
it shall be admitted.
What are your degrees?
I obtained my criminal justice MA from Ashford University in 2014.
What is your focus as a professor?
My criminal justice MA opened doors for me, and for 5 years now, I've taught a course at CU Denver on police practices and social justice.
You said that you're an expert witness in police practices. What do those include?
I have testified as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
How much experience do you have with forensic evidence?
I've been accepted as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction 8 times, and general police investigation tactics 12 times. I've also been consulted on more than 100 cases.
How much experience do you have with cell tower investigations?
I have been accepted by various courts as an expert witness in cell tower investigations 5 times.
Your Honor, I would like to tender Blake Van Owens as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police tactics.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
So admitted.
As an expert, what are your thoughts on the prosecution's interpretation of events?
I agree that the physical on-scene evidence points to an intruder who broke into the home of the victim, but that's about all that we agree on. The prosecution came to an easy conclusion.
Could you expand on that?
The problem with going for the easy is that it leaves significant doubt as to who actually committed this crime. I'm talking about the level of doubt that should have caused the prosecution to go back to the drawing board instead of impaneling a jury, for heaven's sake.
Have you had any prior experiences with Detective Markowitz or Kyle Kuzak?
Unfortunately, I have.
Can you tell us about those?
I've been involved in more than one case handled by Detective Markowitz, and I have little doubt about how his relationship with Kyle Kuzak has completely blindsided this case.
Do you have any experience analyzing autopsies related to knife-inflicted wounds?
I've reviewed autopsy and crime scene reports from hundreds of stabbings.
Tell me about the murder weapon.
You mean the murder weapon that's a completely different brand from the knives in the knife block? Which, I might add, Kuzak acknowledges? Houston, we have a problem.
Why is the knife block relevant to this case?
The crime scene photos of the kitchen show that the murder weapon was not just a different brand from the knives in the knife block. It was completely inconsistent with the style and blade dimensions of the otherwise orderly and same set of knives that were there. Considering all that, it would make much more sense for the intruder to have brought the weapon with them to the scene of the crime, rather than finding it there.
What is your opinion on the prosecution's interpretation of events related to the stabbing?
The physical evidence clearly shows that Kuzak's flight of fancy is not reasonable. The only apparent evidence of a struggle is the scuffing on the floor, which isn't indicative of Kuzak's quarrel for the knife scenario.
If not Kuzak's proposed scenario, where could these scuff marks have come from?
You can't carbon date scuff marks to see how old they are. Those marks could have been made years before the incident.
What else can you tell us about the stabbing?
Kuzak asserts that, based on the knife's position, the intruder was in front of Brackman and the two of them were struggling for control of the knife. This is obviously incorrect.
Why is that incorrect?
The autopsy report reveals that the knife was inserted into the victim's back, with the front side of the knife being the blade pointing forward, as I've illustrated on page 2 of my case report. In order for the assailant to have stabbed Mackenzie Brackman in this manner, He would have to have been much taller than him in order to exert the amount of force necessary at that angle to nick Brackman's aorta. But we know from the ring videos that this just isn't the case. The assailant is of a similar height to Mr. Brackman.
So is the prosecution's interpretation of events possible?
No, not at all. The prosecution thinks that their interpretation of the events is correct for two reasons. First, the scuffing on the floor, which is flimsy evidence at best, and the Ring doorbell alert.
Can you elaborate on the Ring doorbell alert?
We don't know whether Mackenzie Brackman had the Ring set up to receive real-time notifications. That would have been an easy thing for the prosecution to figure out, but they failed to obtain the complete records. But even if Mr. Brackman was receiving those alerts, that says nothing about whether he was paying attention to them.
So in your expert opinion, how was Mackenzie Brackman really stabbed?
Under the circumstances, it makes much more sense for Mr. Brackman to have been sitting, with the intruder standing behind him, having surprised him after breaking into the home. Then, of course, the knife wound in the back would be consistent with the size of the intruder. Substance usually follows form.
More specific to the prosecution's investigation, what can you tell us about cell towers?
What can I tell you?
Objection.
What's your objection?
Vague question, Your Honor.
Could you rephrase the question?
What can you tell us about your cell tower analysis?
Cell phones have the ability to connect to multiple towers. A cell phone is designed to select the tower that gives it the best signal. This isn't always the nearest tower. In a metropolitan setting, for example, someone might make 5 calls and link up to 5 different cell towers to make those calls.
Can you describe the relationship between cell phones and cell towers?
Objection. Lack of personal knowledge, Your Honor.
Counsel, your response to that?
Your Honor, Mrs. Owens was admitted as a cell phone tower analysis expert.
And how does that trump the lack of personal knowledge?
Because she is about to describe the relationship between cell phones and cell phone towers.
Okay, I'll allow it.
Mrs. Owens, can you describe the relationship between cell phones and cell towers?
Yes, building off of what I just said, the cell tower near the victim's residence covers a wide area. There were likely dozens of people in that area at the time, but the call detail records wouldn't be able to tell us where any of them were. Cell tower data is not GPS information.
What does that mean?
Even if the person with Avery Becker's phone was actually in the area normally covered by that one tower, this person could easily have been far enough away to not even see the victim's house from their location. And even if the phone was in the area covered by that tower, there's no indication that Becker was in possession of the phone at that moment.
Can you please elaborate on that?
As I'm sure you'll soon hear, Avery Becker, on the day of the murder, was accompanied by her best friend, Taylor Perkins, as they were searching for her stolen phone, the same phone that the prosecution believes was in the general vicinity of this crime scene. What's worse is that the prosecution never thought to obtain the cell tower data records related to Taylor Perkins' phone, despite the fact that he was with Avery Becker the entire day of the murder.
What did you think about these screenshots?
Which screenshots would that be?
That would be the screenshots. That would be the screenshot from Avery Becker's phone, Exhibit 14 and Exhibit 15, or just Exhibit 14.
Objection. Speculation, Your Honor.
Speculation as to the exhibit or speculation as to her testimony?
As to her testimony, she's asking Miss Van Owen to say what she thinks of these text messages between Alex Fuentes and Avery Becker, Your Honor.
Yeah, I don't think what she thinks. I think if you want her to draw a legal conclusion or a conclusion, you should ask it that. You can ask it that way.
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Owens, What do you know about these screenshots?
Well, I'm stunned that the police simply accepted the screenshots of the messages. They didn't bother to look at the phone themselves. They didn't even bother to conduct a more exhaustive examination of that phone.
In what ways could they have further examined these?
The police have special mobile forensic software, the Denver police use Celebrate, I believe, that allows them to easily download the contents of any cell phone, including the actual text messages that might be on it. The problem with using a screenshot of a smartphone is that the image can be easily doctored. If the police were truly invested in finding the murderer, they could have easily downloaded the contents of Fuentes' phone. If you have this technology and you do not use it in a murder investigation, just when do you use it?
Is there a more likely suspect involved in this case?
The problem with the easy culprit here is the motive. I uncovered someone with a much stronger motive to kill Mr. Brackman than Becker. This person is the child of one of Brackman's former clients, Blair Rollins.
You mentioned that Blair Rollins' parents was the former client of Mackenzie Brackman. Can you elaborate on that?
A few months before the murder, Mr. Brackman represented Jonathan Rollins, Blair's father, who had been charged with murder. Try as Mr. Brackman might, the evidentiary chips were stacked against him and his client. Jonathan Rollins was convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
All of these considered, in your professional opinion, what are your thoughts surrounding the prosecution's handling of this case?
In the end, the investigation was rushed. It has all the hallmarks of, I made up my mind at the get-go, and then I found evidence that would support that conclusion. When you pick the easy culprit, you don't have to go out into the sun and sift patiently through the evidence.
That is all, Your Honor.
Right, any cross-examination, Mr. Bauer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Okay. Ms. Van Owen, why did you leave the Aurora Police Department?
I already answered that, but I left the department after I realized that a lot of their practices and protocols I just didn't agree with. Things you could get away with as an officer are just morally wrong, and I didn't want to participate in that.
Is there any other reason you left the Aurora Police Department?
No.
No other conflicts with any people that you have arrested?
Well, I did mention that the reason specifically that I left the police department was because I had injured a young woman of color during an arrest. And I regret that even to this day. But I quit in order to atone for my actions on that evening.
Okay. Is it true that in court you've only ever testified as a defense expert?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. I would like to direct your attention to the scuff marks on the floor of Kenzie Brackman's home. Are you aware of these?
Yes.
And is it true that scuff marks could indicate an underlying struggle between a perpetrator and a victim?
I suppose so, but we don't have before and after pictures of the home. And
Okay.
so
I would like to move on to knife reconstruction. Could you please explain to the court what knife reconstruction is?
Knife reconstruction is reconstructing how the knife could have been held or handled during a specific incident.
And how is it useful to this case?
Well, the murder weapon, from the shape of the stab wound found in the victim's body, we can use that to determine in which way the murder weapon was held during the stabbing, which
Okay.
is blade side pointing forward.
Thank you. I would like to direct your attention. I would like to direct your attention to exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4. Have you looked at these exhibits yourself?
Which exhibits are those, counsel?
I would like for my co-counsel to please pull up exhibits 1, followed by 2, followed by 3, followed by 4.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last part. Oh, there we go. Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I see them displayed. If you
Yes.
want to proceed with your questioning.
I would ask for my co-counsel to please remove those exhibits from the screen share. Okay, Ms. Van Owen, have you looked at these exhibits yourself prior to this court hearing?
I have.
And would you agree that these exhibits I'm I'm doing this on my computer that's connected to my Apple ID, and people are calling me for a test. I am really sorry.
That's okay. We do court hearings by a similar program, and we've all had it happen to us. So just keep going.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Van Owen, would you agree that these exhibits are a fair and accurate photographic representation of Mr. Brackman's death?
I do.
And could you please explain to the court what is shown in exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Those exhibits show Mr. Brackman's body as it was found at the scene of the crime after he had been stabbed.
And is it true that the photographs show a horizontal stab on the back of Mr. Brackman's back?
Yes.
Continually with a knife, how did you say that the perpetrator was holding it?
With the blade side pointing forward.
So in your own words, you agree that you said when people grab a knife to stab down, most people hold it like the movie scene in Psycho with the blade pointed down to the ground.
Yes, but not everyone holds it like that.
But you did say that the perpetrator of this crime held the knife like that.
I did.
Okay, so the knife wounds shown in exhibit 2, 3, and 4 are all horizontal, but you said that the perpetrator held a knife with the blade facing down. This is incorrect, right?
Not necessarily.
So are you disagreeing with your witness statement?
No.
So you do agree that the perpetrator held the knife with the knife facing downward, but it created a horizontal stab wound. How could that be?
The autopsy reports revealed that the stab wound had to have been made in that manner based on knife reconstruction.
Okay. On to Avery Becker. Is it true that the day she was missing from school was the day that the crime was committed?
Yes, but she was also with another student during the entire day.
Okay. Do you agree that call detail records help show the relative location where someone was at the time of receiving a message or a call?
I do.
And was Avery Becker around the house of Brackman at the time that the crime was committed?
We can't know that for sure. Cell tower data is not GPS information.
But is it fair to assume that she was around the relative location of Mr. Brackman's house around the time that the crime was committed?
I wouldn't say so. There's no indication that Avery Becker was the one in possession of the phone at the time. She was searching for the stolen phone on the day of the murder.
Honor. Badgering the witness.
I'll allow it. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. That is all. No further questions.
Okay, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, does the defense have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call Amy Becker to the stand.
Okay.
Can you state your name and spell it out?
My name is Avery Becker, spelled Averybecker.
Good. Can we talk a little bit about your academic performance?
Yeah, I was a pretty outstanding student, I'd say. I had great grades. I won awards while I was on mock trial, and I never really had any altercations.
And then, so your performance within mock trial, how was that again?
Well, I won Best Attorney Award and Best Closing, and I was really good at it.
So now that we've established from your testimony that you're a good student, who were you with on the day of the murder?
I was with my best friend, Taylor Perkins.
And who is Taylor Perkins?
He's my best friend, and he was on the mock trial team with me and a classmate.
Were you two at school that day, the day of the murder, that is?
No, the day of the murder, we ditched school to go look for my phone.
What about the day before the murder? Who were you with?
The day before the murder, I was with Taylor. We went to the Fry Shack in the mall, and I interacted with a couple other people too.
While you were at the Fry Shack, who were you with?
Taylor Perkins, and then a couple team members from the mock trial team were also there, and Alex Cifuentes came and sat with us.
And when was the last time you had contact with your phone?
At the Fry Shack.
Did anybody touch your phone at the Fry Shack that you might have seen?
No, not that I can recall.
Gotcha. So who is Alex Cifuentes?
Alex Cifuentes was a teammate on the mock trial team with me.
And how would you describe your relationship with Alex Cifuentes?
We weren't really friends. I feel like she was maybe a little jealous of me, but there were never any hard feelings or altercations.
Steering a little bit away from that, you vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, correct?
Yes.
Why?
Well, I had just won my awards, and Mr. Brackman told me pretty much that I didn't deserve them and that I was like unworthy of the awards, and it really hurt coming from him because I love mock trial and he's the coach, and I just, I want to make him proud and the team proud, and so it really hurt when he said I didn't deserve the awards.
And what did you write on the car with?
I wrote on the car with a permanent marker.
Were you aware that it was a permanent marker?
No, I was just, before the altercation happened with Mr. Brackman, I was about to write on the whiteboard, and then that all happened, and I thought it was a washable marker in my hand, a dry erase marker, but it was a permanent marker.
Did you feel guilty at all for what you did?
I felt terrible. I tried to apologize multiple times. I asked him if I could pay for the damages. I'd get a job during the summer. I went to his office, but he just wouldn't speak to me.
And what was Mr. Brackman's response to that?
Nothing. He completely ignored me, and so I just decided I should keep my distance, and I feel awful because I never got to apologize.
So, in your opinion, was there any other person who you think had a feud with Mr. Brackman related to the case?
I think Blair Rollins and Alex Cifuentes could have possibly teamed up and killed Brackman.
In your opinion, why do you think Blair Rollins?
Well, Brackman lost Blair's father's case, and so Blair Rollins' father was sentenced to life in prison because of Brackman.
Gotcha. So you're a straight A student, correct?
Yes.
Have an amazing mock trial career.
Yes.
I would assume a good social life.
Yeah.
So now I ask you, with what appears to be no visible motive other than a small feud, did you kill Mr. Brackman?
I did not kill Mr. Brackman. I would never want to bring harm to him or anyone for that matter. What happened with the car, that was something I regret the most. And I would never hurt Mr. Brackman.
That is the end of questioning, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the prosecution have any cross-examination? Mr. Costin, feel free to proceed.
Hello, Miss Becker. You were a student at Colorado High School last year, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were on mock trial team as well?
Yes.
And so Mr. Brackman was your coach, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And now you and Mr. Brackman, you didn't have a really cordial relationship, did you?
No, it was a lot of tension.
And so you had clashing beliefs about practice and mock trial?
Yes.
And do you understand why you and Mr. Brackman had clashing relationship?
Yes, he thought I was lazy and he didn't like that I kind of did my own thing when it came to mock trial.
And so, and was one of these beliefs because you didn't practice enough, that he didn't think you practiced enough?
Yeah, he thought I didn't practice enough.
And so in relationship to the other mock trial students, you didn't study for practice like they did, is that true?
Yes, that is true.
Is this the reason that he believed you did not have enough practice?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer. He's asking the witness direct questions to get a specific answer out of her.
Well, this is cross-examination. I'll allow it.
And Miss Becker, is it common for people to study and prepare for mock trial?
Sure. Yeah.
And yet you didn't study as hard as others, did you?
No, because I felt that I was good enough that I didn't need to study as hard.
And moving on, what position in mock trial did you often participate in?
Attorney and witness.
And you won an award for this at regionals, didn't you?
Yes.
And it was called the Best Attorney
Objection,
Award.
Your Honor, relevance.
Counsel, what's the relevance?
I'm building up a foundation.
I'll allow it if you can get there quickly.
And it was called Best Attorney Award, is that correct?
Ms. Buckley, we couldn't hear you.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
And now, did Mr. Brackman say you did not deserve their award?
Yeah, that's pretty much what he said.
And then after practice that night, did you write in permanent marker, Worst Attorney Award on Mr. Brackman's Porsche 911 Carrera?
Yes.
And after you vandalized Coach Brackman's car, meanwhile breaking a state law as you did it, Coach Brackman kicked you off the mock trial team, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, Coach Brackman could have charged you for vandalizing his car, but gave you some mercy and did not make you pay for the vandalization, did he?
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Cosin is badgering the witness.
I disagree. Keep proceeding.
I'll ask that question again. Now, Coach Brackman could have charged you for vandalizing his car, but he gave you some mercy and did not make you pay for the vandalization, did he?
No, he didn't make me pay. We had zero contact pretty much after that.
And after you went home that night, you told your mom that you would get him back if it was the last thing you did. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But you didn't tell your mom about what you did to his car, did you?
No, I was really upset and emotional, and I just couldn't, I didn't want to disappoint her, and she knew I love mock trial, and so.
And moving on the day of the murder, you skipped school, correct?
That is correct.
And you were looking for your phone?
Yes.
Wasn't it at the fry shack that you last remembered using your phone?
Yeah, that's where I last remembered it, yes.
And yes or no, is it possible that your phone was left at Fry Shack since that you have, is it possible that your phone was left at the Fry Shack since that was the last place you remember having it?
Yes.
That is all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Amy Becker, are you positive that nobody was in contact with your phone at the day before the murder at the Fry Shack?
Well, I think that Alex Cifuentes could have picked it up when I left it there and possibly gave it to Blair Rollins or texted himself through it or something, but the last time I saw it was at the Fry Shack.
Gotcha. No further question, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the defense have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to bring Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Okay.
Can you state your name and spell it, please?
Taylor Perkins, TaylorPerkins.
What's your relationship with Avery Becker?
Me and Avery are best friends.
Were you and Avery Becker? Where were you and Avery Becker on the day of Coach Brackman's death?
On the day of Coach Brackman's death, March 6th, we were looking for Avery's phone because previous to the day of the murder, he had lost it.
What is your, how close are you and Avery Becker?
Me and Avery are really close. We do everything together. Like, we go out to eat a lot. We go to the mall together. We're really close.
Can you explain what you guys did on the day of Coach Brackman's death?
Yes, counselor. Avery and I normally carpool in the morning, and I was checking to see if he would still come to me, and he wasn't answering. So when he arrived to come pick me up, he told me that he had lost. She told me that she had lost his phone, and I said, "Let's go look for it." So we went around looking for his phone on that day.
Do you know what happened to Mr. Brackman's car?
As far as I know, Avery told me that he meant to write on Coach Brackman's car with the dry erase marker. However, it ended up being a permanent marker.
How is this different from the violence against Mr. Brackman himself?
Avery can be rash sometimes, and he can.
Can you repeat that? You cut off.
Mr. Steele, can we hear you? Can you state that again, please?
My response?
Yes.
Counselor, could you please ask the question again?
How is this different from violence against Mr. Brackman himself?
Yes, counselor. Avery can be rash and can be sometimes emotional, but vandalizing his car and murder or even trying to trash his house is two completely different things, and Avery's not that type of person.
How did Avery feel about her phone?
Avery was kind of always on it, so
Your Honor, can I ask the witness that question again?
Yeah, Mr. Steele, you are somewhat cutting out, so if you could just, I'm going to have counsel ask that question again.
How did Avery feel about her phone?
Avery was kind of attached to her phone, so seeing that it was lost really was kind of quite a shock to me.
How did she go a whole day without noticing it was gone then?
You know, the whole thing was kind of overwhelming, you know. Getting kicked off the mock trial team and Brackman telling her that she's the worst attorney, that's a lot for Avery because Avery loved mock trial.
So let's talk about Alex Fuentes. What's the relationship between them?
Oh, Alex and Avery were always at each other's throats. They did not like each other, and they were kind of a rival. It was kind of like a rivalry, you know. Alex wanted to be the star of the mock trial team, and he was very jealous of Avery.
Your Honor, may I show my screen and show what has been entered as Exhibit 14?
Yes, you may.
Do you recognize this?
No, Counselor, not that I can recall of.
Second. I have, Your Honor, 1 second. I have accidentally X out of the exhibit. One. Okay. Do you recognize this exhibit?
It seems familiar. Avery told me that he asked Alex to get back on the mock trial team, but that was kind of a last resort. But that's as far as I know how much he told me.
In this exhibit, Avery texted Alex, why would you think that? Why would?
Well, Avery loved mock trial, and I think that he would do anything to get back on the team. And texting Alex was just a last resort, you know.
So were Avery and Alex friends?
No.
Is Avery capable of trashing Mr. Brackman's house?
No, Avery. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Is Avery capable of trashing Mr. Brackman's house, if not anyone's house?
No. Avery's.
Your Honor, can
Mr.
you?
Zeman, can you restate that objection? Stop timing for a moment. Mr. Zeman's feed is not working.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, now, Mr. Zeman, try and unmute yourself and see if that helps. Or he might be frozen. Okay.
Yeah, you cut out for me there too.
And what was your objection?
Lack of personal knowledge. Mr. Perkins cannot know whether Avery is capable of something or not.
Okay, and you can resume timing. And counsel, what's your response to that?
I couldn't hear him. He was breaking out. Could he repeat that?
Lack of, I was so intent on paying attention to the timing. Was it lack of foundation, Mr. Zeman?
Lack of personal knowledge.
Oh, lack of personal knowledge.
Taylor Perkins is best friends with Avery, and so he would know Avery's character and who she hangs out with and who she has a good relationship with.
I'll allow it.
Okay. Do you think Alex stole Avery's phone?
I think it's definitely a possibility.
Objection. Speculation.
Your Honor, can I?
Yes, to speculate.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Okay. Do you think Alex stole Avery's phone?
I think it's a possibility. I mean, I think Alex would do anything to be a star of the mock trial team, even frame Avery for vandalization.
Where were you when the cell phone towers detected Avery's phone near Mr. Brackman's house?
I was at my house trying to call Avery because normally we carpool every morning, and he was supposed to come to my house, but he wasn't answering. So,
what's the relationship between Coach Brackman and Avery?
honestly, they were kind of always at each other's throats. Coach Brackman thought that Avery was lazy and that he didn't really try.
Your Honor.
Yeah, Mr. Steele, can you restate that, please? You cut out.
Can the timer also be stopped?
Yeah, stop the timing for a minute. Mr. Steele, can you test your audio?
Is it working now?
Yeah, okay, start timing again. Can you respond again?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Were you with Avery the whole day?
Yes, Counselor, I was. Which day are you referring to, though?
The whole day of the murder.
Yes, Counselor.
Did you see Avery break into Mr. Brackman's house?
No, we were at the mall, and then we went to the Fry Shack.
What were you doing on the day of the murder?
Well, like I said before, we were looking for Avery's phone. We were kind of going all over town.
That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Zeman, do you have any cross?
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, Mr. Perkins, Avery is your best friend, correct?
That is correct.
If you had done mock trial, you would not have done mock trial, correct?
That is also correct.
Brackman demoted Avery to the B team, so you left the A team to force Brackman to put him back on the A team.
Objection. What's the relevance of this question?
I'm going to allow it. Keep going, Mr. Zeman.
Did I repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Brackman demoted Avery to the B team, so you left the A team to force Brackman to put him back on the A team. Is that right?
That is also correct.
Is it fair to say that you let Avery lead you? You would do anything for him.
I don't think I would do anything for him, but I definitely wanted him to be on the mock trial team because that's the whole reason I joined. I joined mock trial to spend more time with Avery.
Okay, let's move on. Brackman was always giving Avery a hard time.
That is correct.
Did you think that Brackman was a good coach?
No, I don't think that he was a very good coach.
Did you approve of the way Brackman treated Avery after he won the awards at regionals?
No, I did not.
Did you approve of the way Brackman treated Avery after the incident with the Porsche?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Did you approve of the way Brackman treated Avery after the incident with the Porsche?
No, counselor, I did not.
Is it fair to say that you didn't really like Brackman?
That would be a fair statement.
Okay. Were you and Avery friends with Fuentes?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Were you and Avery friends with Alex Fuentes?
No, Alex was really weird. We didn't like him very much, and he didn't like us.
You believed that Alex wanted Avery off the team so he could shine, right?
That is correct.
You wanted to punch Alex when he was feeling sorry for Avery, is that right?
That is also correct.
Is it fair to say
Objection,
you
what are the
didn't like
relevance of these questions?
Counsel, your relevance?
Goes to Perkins' motive to discredit Alex.
I'll allow it. Please proceed.
Is it fair to say that you didn't like Alex?
That is also correct. However, Alex did not also like us. It was kind of a mutual hate.
Most college students are very protective of their phones, but Avery lost his.
That is correct. Avery was very overwhelmed with the situation that happened with Brackman getting kicked off the team and all.
I can understand that you didn't remember to use Find My Phone because you didn't have an Android, but Avery didn't have an Android, did he?
Objection, what's the relevance of this question?
Counsel?
This goes to the strength of the alibi because Avery did something that was irrational.
I'll allow it.
Could you repeat that question again, please?
I can understand that you didn't remember to use Find My Phone, but Avery didn't have an Android, did he?
I don't recall what phone he had.
Okay. Is it your testimony today that you do not recall what kind of phone Avery had?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out for me.
Is it your testimony today that you do not recall what kind of phone Avery had?
That is correct.
Okay, I would like to direct you to line 83 of your witness statement. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Avery had an iPhone, and I guess we could have used Find My Phone to locate it, but I have an Android, and we didn't remember that you could. Well, you can also just use the iCloud website to find an Apple. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Your counsel
I ask
badgering
again,
my
is it
witness.
your testimony today that you do not remember?
Hold on,
what
Mr.
kind-
Zeman. What was your objection, counsel?
The counsel is badgering my witness.
I think it was a proper question regarding refreshing his recollection. Proceed, Mr. Zeman.
So I ask again, is it your testimony today that you do not remember what kind of phone Avery had?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you say that Alex is good friends with Rollins?
I definitely think that they were friends. I mean, yeah.
Would it surprise you to learn that Alex denies this?
No, not really.
Did you know that Brackman was killed on his porch?
No, counselor.
So it is your testimony today that you did not know that Brackman was killed on his porch.
That is correct.
I would like to direct you to line 89 of your affidavit. I'm going to read. I did not think much of it, but it's kind of creepy to think about the fact that Brackman was bleeding on his porch or dead while we were talking about him. Did I read that correct?
Yes, counselor, you did.
Your Honor, the witness statement says.
Len, is there an objection? Is there an objection?
Your Honor, in the witness statement, I think my witness was talking about in a future tense, and he's talking about a past in the past tense form.
You can clarify that on redirect. Continue, Mr. Zeman.
So is it your testimony today that you did not know that Brackman was bleeding on his porch?
In a past tense, that is correct.
Okay, no further questions.
All right. Counsel, if you have any redirect. I believe you have about, and timers tell me if I'm wrong, she has about 20 seconds left. Is that right?
20 seconds?
I just want to be clear.
25 seconds.
25 seconds, yes.
When you were talking about Mr. Brackman bleeding, was that in a past tense form?
I did not know at the time that it was happening that he was bleeding out. Obviously, I was not there, so I don't see how I was supposed to know.
You were talking about it as a joke.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
You meant that as in the future when it was.
Yes. After I found out.
I'm sorry. Time is up. Thank you. Are there any other witnesses? Which your time is up.
No, Your Honor. No more
Okay.
witnesses.
And we would have closing arguments. Do we have anybody for prosecution for closing arguments? Mr. Costin. You have 5 minutes. If you want to reserve any time for rebuttal, you'll need to indicate that prior to the conclusion of your 5 minutes.
Okay.
Please proceed.
All right, thank you. May it please the court, members of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Ben Costin. My co-counsel, Matthias Bauer, Robbie Zeman, and I represent the people of the state of Colorado this morning. In my opening statement, my colleague mentioned that he would call 3 witnesses to testify for the defendant's guilt. Each witness testified as he elucidated. During the examinations, we have clearly established the following facts beyond a reasonable doubt: that there is evidence suggesting the defendant's whereabouts, leading him to get in, get out, get even. Second, that the defendant has already committed a crime before. And third, that the defendant has had practice lying on stand, as seen earlier through witness Alex Fuentes, and has What needs to be proven is that the defendant was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the crime committed on March 6, 2020. The crime committed was a second-degree burglary and a first-degree murder. Second-degree burglary is the breaking into a building illegally with the intent to commit a crime. This has been proven through extensive questioning by my colleague of Detective Markowitz. Exhibit 15 and 16 further completed the missing parts of the puzzle by showing the whereabouts of Becker's phone and Becker's most likely path taken to Coach Brackman's house. First-degree murder is described as the unlawful killing that is both willful and premeditated. The exhibits 9 through 14 and 17 through 18 complete the puzzle. Exhibit 9 indicates the struggle that occurred between the victim and the defendant that was explained in questioning of expert Kyle Kuzak. Exhibits 10 through 13 illustrate the perpetrator testing the front door, going through the back gate, and finally illegally entering the back door of Mr. Brackman's house, as earlier stated through expert Kyle Kuzak. Exhibit 14 indicates the text messages exchanged between Mr. Becker and Alex Fuentes, clearly indicating the defendant's motive, all explained clearly by expert witness Jordan Markowitz. Exhibit 17 is the witness tracking sheet, as well as the flowchart of expert Kyle Kuzak, suggesting the flow of events that occurred leading up to the murder and the fleeing of the defendant. Finally, Exhibit 18 shows the scuff marks in the kitchen of Mr. Brackman's house, again suggesting the struggle that occurred between victim and defendant. These exhibits clearly prove the defendant got in, got out, and got even with his victim, all the more proving his guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Furthermore, we would also like to remind you, since the defendant has already committed crime, he has nothing to stop him from committing another. We would also like to argue that Professor Van Owen and Taylor Perkins lack credibility. Mr. Van Owen has a lack of credibility to reconstruct a crime scene. She does not do in-person analysis of the crime scene and only bases her reports on specific parts of the CSR reports. Mr. Perkins is also a college student who has gotten a majority of his information from Mr. Becker, thus has no credibility in any field, and is incredibly biased towards his friend, the defendant. On the other hand, our witnesses have great credibility, having years of experience and knowledge in their fields. Moreover, the defense's arguments are no more than excuses and covers for their defendant. In conclusion, on March 6, 2020, the defendant got in, got out, and got even by brutally murdering Mr. Brackman. In today's society, it is an important principle that individuals are held accountable for their actions. May I also remind you that as the prosecution, we do not have to prove that the defendant had the intent to murder, just the intent to commit burglary. And now I turn it over to you, the jury, as the pressure is now upon you to bring justice to modern society and make it a bit safer. In conclusion, we would like to ask that you find the defendant guilty as charged on all accounts, and moreover, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. And defense, your closing.
Ladies and gentlemen, whole council, and your honor today, we heard an elaborate story about two experts who failed to do their jobs and gave an inadequate collection and presentation of evidence against Avery Becker, whose biggest failing was vandalizing the car of a teacher whom she felt attacked her, an action she repeatedly apologized for, certainly not the behavior of a murderer. The prosecution presented three witnesses, a high school rival of Avery Becker who had no knowledge of the crime. She wasn't there, she wasn't a friend of Avery, she just simply saw that Coach was being criticized and felt bad. Both police experts, with all the technological tools that the government used for and the years of expertise they have in their field, skipped several vital steps in their investigation. We brought you Avery Becker, an honor student, an award-winning mock trial competitor who testified she felt terrible. She went home and cried after she realized the marker that she used to deface her coach's car was permanent instead of temporary in outbursts of anger. She felt horrible. She testified that she was with her friend Taylor Perkins all day of the murder. Now let's talk about Taylor Perkins. Taylor Perkins not only testified to the character of his best friend, he also verified that he was with her all day. Indeed, he presented an alibi. Perhaps you're skeptical about testimony of teenagers, so consider the testimony of a crime scene reconstruction and police investigator tactic expert Blake Van Owen. Owen concluded that police used the cell phone tower investigation tool that they had and instead relied on screenshots, which are easily manipulated. Police identified as the murder weapon a knife that did not match the location where the prosecution said it came from, and it was the weapon that could not possibly have been used successfully by someone Avery Becker's size. And the police ignored obvious connections between Blair Rollins and the murder weapon. Rollins, as you learn, had a significant motive to kill Coach Beckman, the man who sent his father to prison for life. Let's remember, this is a teenager. This is a teenager's life. Avery Becker could not have killed Coach Beckman. For you to conclude that Avery Becker must suffer and pay the price for a crime that she did not commit, I remind you, you must decide beyond a shadow of doubt that she, Avery Becker, is guilty. This is just poor police work that casts a shadow. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, at this time, the scoring panelists are going to score. Did you guys find your scoring panel sheets? Okay, good. And let me know when you're done, because generally we used to do this in person. Once the scoring has been done, we then allow, if you want to give any feedback or comments to any of the students, or if students have any questions. So let me know when you guys are done.
Could you please repeat your question? My audio keeps cutting out.
Oh, sure. No, what the scoring panelists are scoring, and as soon as they are done with their scoring, when we did this live, we would allow conversations or questions from either the students or for the scoring panel to give feedback to the students if you guys so want them. If you don't, you don't have to, but wasn't sure if we were still doing that on Zoom.
I have submitted mine, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll just wait for Mr. Thomas.
I didn't get the team defense or the team code for the defense.
Can someone from the defense give us their code?
I'm sorry, code of what, Your Honor?
Your defense's code for purposes of scoring.
I believe they're team 7. At least that's what we received in our, it was team 5 versus team 7.
Okay, gotcha, thanks. Okay.
Are you done?
Yep.
All right, if students want to turn their cameras back on and their So I will, I'll just start and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Faust and Mr. Thomas. Welcome to our world. We have been doing online trials for a year, and I can tell you each one of us feels your pain. And you guys did a tremendous job in working with the technology, and I know it's really hard just in general. So you guys should all give yourselves a pat on the back. And you all recovered when you needed to, and even when time ran out, you know, good job in just allowing that to happen. And so I applaud you all. This is not what court